The first thing the pilots noticed was the silence. Not the quiet of peace, but the kind of silence that comes right before something unbelievable happens. A group of American pilots stood on a muddy English airfield in early 1944, staring at a strange twin-engine aircraft sitting under a canvas cover. It looked sleek, predatory, almost too modern to be a wartime machine. One pilot whispered, "No way that thing's real. The Germans don't build planes that smooth." But it was real, and it had been captured intact. The Messerschmitt Me-410, a machine Allied intelligence had only heard rumors about, mostly from terrified bomber crews who claimed it came out of nowhere and then disappeared just as fast. But until that morning, nobody on the Allied side had ever touched one. Now it sat right in front of them, cold, silent, but somehow still threatening. A mechanic pulled back the canvas. The pilots stepped closer, and one of them, Lieutenant Mark Haskins, felt his stomach tighten. The nose of the Me-410 was long and sharp, almost like a spear. Its twin engines were tucked smoothly into the wings. No bumps, no rough edges. Everything about it screamed speed. And the truth was, none of them were ready for what they were about to discover. The morning fog rolled around their boots as the test teams circled the aircraft. They weren't just curious. They were nervous. Rumor said that German pilots called this plane a Hornisse, a Hornet, because it struck fast and hit harder than anything the Allies had. Haskins placed his hand on the metal skin. It felt warm, alive. "Looks like it wants to take off on its own," he muttered. Captain Reese laughed under his breath, but the sound was thin, uneasy. "Let's just hope it behaves today." A British test pilot, Flight Lieutenant Owen Briggs, climbed onto the wing and leaned into the cockpit. "Good Lord, look at this layout. Everything's clean, organized. This control panel feels more modern than half the stuff we fly." That was the first surprise. Not the engines, not the sleek frame, just the cockpit. It was smarter, faster to read, designed for rapid decisions in combat. Still, nothing compared to what they found when they finally fired up the engines. A small crowd formed as mechanics connected the fuel lines and double-checked the systems. The pilots stepped back, hands over their jackets, watching with the kind of focus men get when they know they're dealing with something dangerous. Briggs settled into the seat, strapped on his harness, and gave a thumbs up. "Starting starboard engine," he said. A mechanic shouted, "Clear." The first call from the Daimler-Benz engine made the pilots jump. The second rumble shook the ground. Then the engine roared to life with a smoothness none of them expected. It didn't sputter. It didn't rattle. It sang. One of the younger American flyers whispered, "Holy hell, that thing sounds like a race car." The second engine kicked in, same smooth roar, same eerie feeling. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. Briggs eased the throttle forward. The aircraft rolled, slowly at first, then a little faster. And then, suddenly it was gone. Every head on the field snapped forward as the Me-410 shot down the runway. The acceleration didn't look real. It didn't feel real. It looked like someone had yanked the aircraft forward with a giant invisible cable. Lieutenant Haskins blinked hard. No way. Planes don't do that. Not twin-engine heavies, not fighters, nothing. The aircraft lifted smoothly into gray sky, climbing faster than their P-51s and P-38s ever did. Captain Reese let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. If the Germans have more of these, God help our bomber boys. The test flight lasted only a few minutes, but when Briggs landed and climbed out of the cockpit, his face said everything. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't excited. He looked shaken. "This thing's unnatural," he said softly. "The acceleration, good Lord, I barely touched the throttle and it wanted to leap forward. And the climb power, I swear I felt it pulling me into sky." The mechanics and intelligence officers closed in. Someone shouted questions, but Briggs raised a hand. "Wait, there's more." Everyone quieted. "This aircraft is heavy, heavier than the fighters we fly, but it moves like something half its weight. There's no hesitation, no delay. When you push the throttles forward, it doesn't respond. It reacts instantly, faster than anything I've flown, faster than anything we have." A chill spread through the group. If a single captured plane behaved like this, what could a whole squadron do? Haskins swallowed. No wonder our bomber crews said it came out of nowhere. But acceleration wasn't the only shock. Briggs pointed toward the nose. And you should see the gun setup. The firepower on that thing. If you were flying a bomber and this got behind you, you'd never know what hit you. The team climbed onto the aircraft again, peering into the nose compartment. For 20mm cannons, arranged in a tight cluster, stare back at them. Behind those, machine guns. And mounted near the belly, something even more alarming. A special weapon system they'd only heard whispers about. One of the intelligence officers went pale. If the Germans used this on our heavy bombers, the casualties. Nobody finished the sentence. They didn't have to. For the first time since the war began, these seasoned pilots felt like they were looking at a glimpse of the future. And it wasn't on their side. Haskins looked at the Me-410 again. The engines ticked as they cooled, almost like the machine was breathing. He wondered how many American crews had gone down without ever seeing the aircraft that killed them. And suddenly the question hit him. How many of these do they actually have? Nobody answered, because nobody knew. But Allied intelligence needed to find out, fast. As the wind picked up across the field, Briggs looked over the group. This plane isn't just fast. It's a hunter. And if the Germans ever figure out how to produce it in large numbers, this war gets a whole lot harder. The pilots exchanged nervous glances. They all knew what came next. Further tests, deeper investigation, and maybe a mission none of them wanted to fly. Because if the Me-410 was this advanced, what were the Germans building next? Haskins took one last look at the silent aircraft. Its dark canopy reflected the low clouds like a cold mirror. Something told him this story wasn't close to over. And he was right. Because the next test flight wouldn't just reveal how fast a Me-410 could accelerate, it would show something even more terrifying. The next morning, the airfield was buzzing with anticipation. Mechanics scurried between trucks and toolboxes. Pilots checked flight logs, and intelligence officers huddled around maps and charts. Everyone knew that today, the Me-410 wouldn't just be observed on the ground. It would take to the skies again. Lieutenant Haskins felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He'd flown dozens of missions, but nothing had prepared him for the sight of this captured aircraft in action. Something about its presence felt almost alive. Dangerous in a way he hadn't yet fully understood. Briggs climbed into the cockpit first, his movements precise but deliberate. He ran through the checklist methodically, his eyes flicking over the dials, the switches, the throttle levers. The twins of the Daimler-Benz engines purred beneath him like restrained predators. "You ready for this?" Haskins asked, standing near the wing. Briggs gave a tight smile. "I think I'm ready. But this one, it might just scare us all." The engines roared to life once again, vibrating the ground under their boots. Haskins and the others held their positions, sensing the raw power that seemed to emanate from the aircraft itself. Briggs eased forward on the throttle, and immediately, the Me-410 responded like it had been waiting for this exact moment. The takeoff was unlike anything they had ever seen. Within seconds, the aircraft was lifting smoothly, accelerating faster than any twin-engine plane should. The clouds above seemed to swallow it as it climbed effortlessly. But then the unexpected happened. Briggs pushed the nose forward slightly to test its dive. The plane obeyed instantly, but something was off. The Me-410's acceleration in a dive was terrifying. The aircraft seemed to almost vanish from view in a blur, and even through the binoculars, Haskins could see the airframe shaking slightly under the force. Back on the ground, one of the mechanics muttered, "I don't care how good our planes are, nothing should move like that." Minutes later, Briggs emerged from a steep climb, circling the airfield. His face was pale, a mixture of exhilaration and disbelief. "Gentlemen," he said, voice tight, "this plane doesn't just accelerate. It hunts. It calculates its own momentum. Every move I made, it responded instantly, anticipating what I wanted before I even realized it. I've never flown anything like it." The group exchanged glances, trying to process what they had just witnessed. Most of them were hardened pilots who had seen their share of death in the skies over Europe. But this This was something else entirely. Captain Reese broke the silence. And the climb? It's not just fast. It's unnatural. You could take it straight up, and it wouldn't even break a sweat. Briggs nodded. Exactly. And the acceleration after the dive, it practically catapults you forward. It's as if the plane has a mind of its own. The mood shifted from excitement to unease. The Me-410 wasn't just another aircraft. They realized, with a chill, that it represented a leap in technology that they weren't prepared for. Over the next few hours, the pilots took turns testing every aspect of the aircraft. Some examined its weapons, marveling at the precision of the nose cannons and the responsiveness of the guns. Others monitored the engines, scribbling notes furiously, trying to understand how such raw power could be harnessed in a plane twice the size of a fighter. One of the younger pilots, Private First Class Jenkins, whispered under his breath as he ran his hand along the wing, "If I were Fly 17 and that thing came after me, I wouldn't stand a chance." Briggs shot him a tight grin, but it didn't reach his eyes. Neither would I, not even with all the experience in the world. Then came the moment that left everyone frozen. Briggs executed a high-speed maneuver at low altitude. The Me-410 darted like a falcon, banking and twisting in ways no one thought possible for a twin-engine plane. Haskins, watching through binoculars, felt his stomach drop. The Me-410 wasn't just fast. It was agile. He could almost imagine the terror of a bomber crew seeing it appear out of nowhere, pulling impossible maneuvers, and then vanishing again. The groups all quickly turned into tension. They realized that if the Germans had deployed even a squadron of these, their bombers would be sitting ducks. Entire missions could be wiped out before the crews even knew what hit them. Briggs landed with the plane shaking from the intensity of the test. Everyone approached cautiously, knowing that what they had just seen wasn't just unusual. It was revolutionary. It sits too fast, too deadly, and it's smart, Briggs said quietly. I think I understand why the Germans called it the Hornisse. It hunts. It predicts. It kills with terrifying efficiency. The intelligence officers nodded grimly. We need to know everything. Every detail. How it's built, how it flies, and how to counter it. Our bomber crews' lives depend on it. As the day went on, the pilots and mechanics documented every observation, every measurement. They compared it to the P-51s and P-38s they flew daily, and the Me-410 left them speechless. In every category, speed, climb rate, maneuverability, it outperformed anything they had seen. By the time dusk fell, the aircraft was secured under the hangar's cover, and the pilots gathered for a final discussion. They spoke in hushed tones, fully aware of the implications of what they had just witnessed. Haskins looked at the Me-410, almost expecting it to spring to life again. We've seen it. We've flown it. But I can't stop thinking, how many of these are out there waiting to take us by surprise? The question hung in the air. Captain Reese finally broke the silence. One thing's clear. This isn't just another enemy aircraft. This is a game changer. And if we don't figure out a way to counter it, we're going to pay dearly. That night, as the pilots retired to their quarters, none of them could sleep. The Me-410 haunted their thoughts. Its roar, its speed, the eerie sense that it anticipated their every move. It was unlike anything they had ever encountered. And somewhere deep inside, Haskins knew that this was just the beginning. Tomorrow, they would push it harder, test it further, and uncover even more of its terrifying capabilities. Because the story of the Me-410 wasn't just about speed. It was about survival, innovation, and a race to understand a weapon that could turn the tide of war. The next flight will reveal just how deadly the Hornisse could truly be, and no one would walk away unchanged. The next day, the airfield was cloaked in a heavy morning fog. There was a sense of unease in the air, pilots moving quickly, mechanics double-checking every bolt, and intelligence officers murmuring over notes. Everyone knew today's test flight wouldn't be ordinary. It was a moment to push the Me-410 to its limits. Lieutenant Haskins watched as Briggs climbed into the cockpit. He tightened the harness and adjusted his helmet, his face set and serious. Today, the Me-410 wasn't just going to accelerate. It was going to reveal its full potential. Throttle up slowly at first, Haskins instructed, though his voice was shaky. "We don't know exactly how this plane will respond under stress." Briggs nodded. "I'll be careful, but I need to know what it can do." The engines roared to life, the sound vibrating through the field like a beast stretching awake. Mechanics signaled clear and stepped back. Briggs eased the throttle forward, and immediately the Me-410 leapt down the runway. The acceleration was astonishing, even to experienced pilots. The plane lifted smoothly, then climbed with a velocity that made their stomachs twist. But the real test came a few minutes later. Briggs pushed the Me-410 into a high-speed dive toward the open field beyond the airstrip. The plane responded instantly, cutting to the fog and whipping past the trees. Haskins felt a cold knot of fear in his chest. He had flown dangerous aircraft before, but never anything that seemed to think faster than the pilot. "Look at it," shouted one of the mechanics. "It's like it's reading him." Briggs leveled the aircraft, then pushed into sharp turns, weaving through imaginary enemies in the sky. The speed and agility were unmatched. The Me-410 banked so sharply that it seemed to defy physics, yet there was no sign of the engines faltering, no hesitation in the controls, nothing. When Briggs returned to the airfield, sweat glistening on his forehead, the group approached cautiously. "I've never flown anything like that," he admitted, his voice low. It's not just fast. It's precise. Every maneuver I tried, it executed perfectly. I could almost forget I was flying. The plane anticipates, adapts, it reacts instantly. This is on another level." Haskins swallowed hard. "If the Luftwaffe has more of these, our bombers don't stand a chance." Briggs nodded grimly. "Exactly. And that's not even the worst part. In a dogfight, a pilot might survive by luck or skill. With this plane, luck doesn't matter. It's as if the machine itself is fighting." The pilots and engineers exchanged uneasy glances. For weeks, they had studied German aircraft. But this was a leap. The Me-410 wasn't just a fighter. It was a predator. The intelligence officers began scribbling notes furiously, documenting engine performance, climb rate, maneuverability, and weapon systems. Every observation pointed to the same unsettling truth. The Me-410 was far ahead of anything the Allies had in service. One officer muttered, "If we can't replicate or counter this, we're looking at catastrophic losses in the next bombing campaign." Mechanics moved quietly around the plane, inspecting the fuselage and wings. Haskins walked over to Briggs, still catching his breath. "How did it feel? I mean, really feel in your hands?" Briggs paused, thinking. "Terrifying and exhilarating. You know how some planes feel mechanical? Predictable? This one, it feels alive. Like it knows what's coming before you do. You're not flying it, you're part of it." A silence fell over the group. It wasn't just a Me-410 speed or firepower that unnerved them. It was the sheer intelligence built into the design. It was a weapon of instinct, precision, and danger all rolled into one. Hours passed as tests continued, each flight pushing the aircraft further. It outperformed expectations every time. Haskins realized that no amount of studying manuals or flight logs could prepare them for a machine like this. By late afternoon, the Me-410 rested under the hangar's shadow. The pilots gathered, their faces a mixture of awe and dread. The aircraft sat silently, deceptively calm, its engines cool but still radiating menace. Captain Reese broke the silence. "We've seen its speed, its power, its firepower, but the scariest part? Its potential. If the Germans mass-produce these, we're going to lose a lot of good men, and fast." Briggs looked at the aircraft, almost reverently. "I don't want to see it in combat. I've flown it. I know how it moves. I know what it can do. And that knowledge, it scares me." Haskins shook his head. "We have to. We can't ignore it. We have to understand it. Because if we don't, someone else will pay the price." As night fell, the field grew quiet. The Me-410 sat under tarps, engine silent, yet somehow still menacing. The pilots returned to their quarters, carrying images of a machine that had challenged everything they thought they knew about flight. Haskins lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. He couldn't shake the feeling that the Me-410 was more than an aircraft. It was a glimpse of the future of aerial warfare. a warning that technology could outpace human skill and that the battlefield was about to change forever. Somewhere deep inside, he knew one thing. This was only the beginning. The Allies had captured one plane, but the Germans were building more. Faster, deadlier, and smarter. And when they were unleashed, the war in the skies would never be the same. The Me-410 had shown them what was possible, but it had also shown them what was at stake. Every bomber crew, every fighter squadron, every mission in the coming months would face a new threat, one that could strike without warning and vanish before anyone knew what hit them. Haskins closed his eyes, trying to shake off the tension. But even in sleep, he saw the plane climbing, diving, accelerating like a living thing, and he knew the story of the Me-410 was far from over. Thanks for following this journey into one of WWI's most remarkable captures. If you found this story as thrilling and eye-opening as the pilots did, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more historic stories, and drop a comment below telling us what shocked you the most about the Me-410. Would you have had the courage to fly it? Or would you have stayed on the ground, watching this mechanical predator in awe? Let us know. And remember, history isn't just about dates and battles. It's about the people, the machines, and the moments that changed everything. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story from the skies of World War II.